Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. Today is Wednesday, and I do my Q&A on Wednesdays. So basically what I do is every Wednesday I get questions from you, the audience, and I answer them the following week. So if you have a question you wanted answered, well, ask me it in the comments below. You can also engage with me on Instagram. My handle on Instagram is Comic Collector Geek, so it's pretty easy to remember. You can check out all the latest things that I'm posting there, and you can ask me a question from Instagram as well. And one of these questions is from Instagram. That's why I'm mentioning that. So um, we're going to get started with these questions. The first question comes from a friend of mine, Brian Combe. And he asks, hiya, Alan. Thanks for all the great content. I know that you collect art books. Do you collect any original art or sketches? If so, could you show some? Um, well, that's kind of an interesting question. So in the previous videos, I actually showed a bunch of original art. I didn't want to show the same original art. So there was an artist when I first, before COVID hit and all that kind of situation, I was actually getting original art done for me, like where I'd get this artist to, create some commission pieces for me. And it was pretty cool. So I do, I get like a couple commissions per month. And so he was an artist that I really like, who did a lot of the crossed. If you're familiar with the Crossed series, he did a lot of the covers for them. Fairly sexy kind of covers, very bit violent. I'm more into the sexy part of the, not the violence, but he did amazing covers, and he does commissions. So I got a bunch of things from him. Some of these are a little bit risque, so I'm gonna have to do a little bit of finger censoring, but I got a bunch here for you to see. And these I've never shown before, so should be good. Okay, the first one is actually a published work that he was selling on his website. He did a kind of like a classic monsters kind of book, and this is the it's all rolled. This is the one of the panels from his monster book, and the reason I like his artwork, it's all black and white, by the way, is the fact that it's just very detailed. He's real. I really like detailed artwork like this. And you can see like you got Dracula and his bride down at the bottom there, and the guy's just about to slay them. And you got Frankenstein's monster, and you got the Wolfman. So I really like these kind of classic monster characters. So I really enjoyed this artwork. So this is one of the ones that he was selling on his website. I was like, oh, and it was really quite reasonable. It was like, I think it was like, I'm going to say 100 euros, something around there, for a very intricate, really well done sketch. So I kind of really like that one. So that's the first one. And then this is a smaller piece that also he was selling. I think this was like 60 euros. I don't even know if I can censor it because, okay, this is going to be uncensored. Spoiler, I'm not sure what you say when you show some. There's going to be a bit of nudity. Apologize to the YouTube community, but it is art. So, a bit of nudity. I like this one though because it's like this alien abduction kind of situation. You got the little aliens and the little doggy. I like the little doggy. It's getting zapped up into the space crafts as well. I believe this is another artwork that was published in one of his portfolios, but I just really like it. So it's alien abduction. Okay, so sorry for the nudity. If you are a bit squeamish about nudity, I don't know. we're all adults here. This one has a bit of nudity, but it's monster nudity, so we'll go with it as well. This one's a bit big. This was one of the ones I commissioned. I said, hey, I'd like to see some Greek style stuff, and he did this really elaborate. Like you can see, it's like all these kind of Greek warriors and like kind of just a really great monster meets like like Athens or something like that. It's kind of really great, great, very detailed. Like I'm not sure if you can see how detailed it is. I'm going to try to zoom in as much as I can. It's quite hard because it is quite a big piece, and it's just every little inch of it is just etched and detailed, and it's really awesome. So get that one, and so a lot of these have a little bit of nudity. I'm sorry for that. I can't finger censor them because it's just, they're rolled, so it's hard to hold and show them. So sorry for the nudity. But this is kind of like a Cleopatra style. And this one is also another one that was from his portfolio where it was the monster related ones. And I bought this as, I think this was 60 euros or 50 euros. It was a really good price. And it's quite, you can see all the mummies and stuff. I think it's quite nice. I like the Cleopatra as well. Okay, so there's that. And this is a commission piece that I got from him. This one is just really, really awesome. I just really like this one. It's like a full-on mummy. And you got the, what are they called? It begins with N. Whatever they're called. And you got the typical like explorer guy at the bottom, and she's kind of like doing the dominatrix thing on him, like this mummy with the great snake staff and all these jackal or headed figures in the background. Just a really great cover. I just really like the detail in his artwork. So this is Raulo Caceres. I can never pronounce his name, but it's really great artwork. Okay, one more to show. I actually have a whole bunch more, but they were way more risque. Just he does do a lot of more risque stuff, but these ones I figured I could show. And this one is like, I like zombies. I'm a really, I watch all the zombie movies and stuff. So, and that's why I enjoyed Crossed, because it was a kind of zombie related series. And he's a Spanish artist. So he kind of made this kind of like, like Spanishy, like maybe like Riding of the Bulls kind of thing, but a whole bunch of zombies, and there's even a bull zombie. You can see the head of the bull zombie there. So it's just, and you got this Spanish woman just really looking quite serene and beautiful, and all the zombies underneath her. And you can see that like the detail is just amazing. Like you can see the amphitheater and that the fact that they're in the middle of an amphitheater, almost like a battle to the death inside of like some like amphitheater kind of situation. And even the lacing on her stockings, I'm not sure if you can see it, but it is really detailed. It is just really amazing. And his commissions weren't too bad. It was like a few $100s. I think it was like 300 euros. So I thought it was very reasonable priced for the size of the pieces, and very detailed stuff. I probably took them a fair amount of time to do. So those are some of my original commissioned art pieces that I haven't ever shown before. Part of the reason I didn't show them was they do have a bit of nudity, and I was a little bit wary about showing too much nudity on my channel. But I figured, hey, it's artwork. We'll let it slide this time. So hopefully nobody gets offended by it. I don't want to offend anyone. Brian also asked a couple other questions, and I'll answer those as well. And this one actually leads to a really kind of cool thing where I had to do a bit of research, and it was kind of fun. On a completely different train of thought, I was recently watching some old Zorro shows on Disney. It struck me that Zorro seems to have a lot in common with Batman. Cave hideout, manservant, etc. I was curious to hear your thoughts on the inspirations for early superheroes. I would love to see any Zorro books you have to show off. Well, sadly, I don't really have any Zorro books. I was never really into collecting Zorro books. The only Zorro book that I have, it would be the Lady Rawhide. And I figure I'm not even sure where it is. Like, it's so poorly organized in here. I don't know where my Lady Rawhide is. I think it's like, I think I created a box of just all my 90s bad girls. And I have to find that box. But yeah, that'd be the only Zorro kind of related thing. And I do believe there was another Zorro title with that, but I really don't have much, sorry, Zorro books. Even though actually I enjoyed the Zorro TV series as well. So I actually really enjoyed it. I used to always watch that. It was on Disney. But this did lead me to doing a lot of investigation about Batman's origin. So Batman actually has like a whole bunch of things that led to his creation. So one of the things that happened was Zorro was a major influence on the creation of Batman. Bob Kane saw Zorro as like kind of a cool character, and he thought, hey, Zorro like plus a little bit of Sherlock Holmes. That was the other major influence for him. And the third big influence actually was what's his name? Leonardo da Vinci. And there's a very famous piece called, I had to write it down because I didn't know how to pronounce it. Ornithopter, ornithopter flying device. And it looks kind of like a bat thing. It's like a wooden thing, and it was like a flying device that Leonardo da Vinci drew in his books. So it's kind of like one of those influences. If you look at the early Batman, the way the cape is drawn and stuff, very similar to Leonardo da Vinci's ornithopter, whatever it is. I'm totally mispronouncing it. Okay, so it's a pretty cool connection. Now those three things kind of led him to then collaborate with I think his name is Finger, and basically they came up they came up with some names for this character, and the way that they came up with the name Bruce Wayne, which is the Batman's true identity, was Bruce was from Robert the Bruce. So he really wanted to kind of create that heroic character with Batman, and just picked up some people from history that he thought were kind of had that heroic spirit. So Robert the Bruce is a Scottish hero who was against King Edward the First, I believe, and was kind of like one of these heroes that kind of was a tragic hero. It's one of those sad stories. In Braveheart, they actually show the character as well, Robert the Bruce. He's a very famous character. Okay, the second part of Bruce Wayne's name, Wayne, comes from actually a really interesting thing. Mad Anthony Wayne. So Mad Anthony Wayne was a very important commander in the Revolutionary War. He basically was important at the Battle of Stony Point, which really turned the tide for the American Revolution. And so basically we got Bruce Wayne made up from these two characters. So that is kind of the origin for Batman, all those elements. So I don't know, a little bit of history about the origin of Batman, the character, and his character creation. So you're right when you said, hey, it seems really similar to Zorro. Well, all the elements of the Batcave and all that kind of stuff, that was kind of borrowed from Zorro, and the elements of the detective kind of points were from Sherlock Holmes. Now, there was one other character that did have an influence, a major influence on Batman, and there's one other movie that had a major influence on Batman. So the other character was Superman. So Superman basically was a character that you know started the golden age of comics, and when his creation was happened, it really created a stir within the comic industry, and you know Bob Kane was basically asked, "Hey, create us a great character just like Superman, like create us another one." So basically, that was kind of the inspiration of the push for another superhero to be made. Um, and so that's why a lot of people credit Superman as being one of those kind of pinnacle characters in terms of how important he was historically for really driving the advent of other superheroes in comics. So, very important character. The other thing that's kind of a quirky little factoid about Batman was there was a movie from 1930 called The Bat Whisperers, I think it's called. Uh, I just want to make sure I get the name right. The Bat Whisperers. Yeah, I was right. Okay, I had it written down. The Bat Whisperers, and they were. It's just like this kind of very dark kind of movie with a glowy eye kind of thing, and that kind of ambiance was very instrumental in like the theme of the way Batman was done. So another kind of quirky little thing that influenced Batman. Okay, so the next question. I hope you enjoyed all that. Okay, the next question comes from Las Vegas Kid, and he asked, "Did you ever buy any Tales from the Crypt? If so, what do you think about buying and investing in them?" So a lot of people don't realize this, but Golden Age horror or pre-code horror is super hot. It's like it in terms of the market. We have the speculative market in the modern age. Well, pre-code horror is kind of like that hot in the golden age in terms of what really drives the market in terms of collectors. So EC Comics that produced Tales from the Crypt is kind of like that top tier of of comics. Like, but the problem with Tales from the Crypt and all of the ones from EC Comics was they were massively published, like huge print runs, and the supply of those books is quite high. Now, fortunately, there's a huge demand as well for those books, and it makes them a good investment. Now, a lot of the books really didn't survive in high grade, so finding high grade copies of these Tales from the Crypt, Crypt of Terror, uh, Fear, what is it? Haunt of Fear. I'm trying to remember all the titles. And then the weird fantasies, the weird science, and all those ones. There's like so many EC titles. Those really are a good investment because there's always going to be that demand of collectors. Now, specifically with Crypt of Terror, or Tales from the Crypt, I should say, it actually is a little bit special amongst all these EC titles. And the reason I say that is there was a movie produced about Tales from the Crypt. And it's one of those ones, it also had a TV series. So it, as a title, is quite well known. And that even adds an extra level of collectability for it. So I'm going to show you a few of my EC titles. I didn't bring a huge amount of them, but I'm going to show you a few that I had handy. When I first had the opportunity to buy Golden Age books, the very first title, this is the very first Golden Age book I ever bought. And it was big money for me. I paid $20 for it. I still have it in the original, with the original price tag on it. And it was Vault of Horror. The Vault of Horror. This is a really great cover. It's a Johnny Craig cover. So it's a really great one. And we got the Crypt Keeper right there. And the Old Witch. and the Vault Keeper. So the three major, you know, narrators for the EC horror titles. It's just a really, I thought it was cool. It was big money for me. I was like, oh, $20? That's like so much money. This was going back like over 30 years ago when I bought this. So at the time, that was big money for me. Okay, so that was Vault of Horror. Now I do have another one that was handy. I actually just did a video with this. This is Haunt of Fear number 17, and I mentioned that this is the origin for those three characters: the Old Witch, the Vault Keeper, and the Crypt Keeper. So yeah, just really great book. I really like this book, and it's also mentioned in Instruction Innocent, so I like that. Now, my favorite cover from Tales from the Crypt is this one, and it was one I had to get. I wish I could. I didn't realize when I bought it that it was a bit of a low grade, and it actually wasn't as. It wouldn't have been so bad, but when it got shipped, it got mangled, and so the spine basically got split in the shipping. But the cover is really, really pretty. It is Tales from the Crypt. I've got 41. Yeah, 41. So yeah, so this one has been homaged many times because it is a great cover. You got the girl with all the little throwing knives around her, and then you got the one axe, and that axe is on a really bad trajectory. Wow, can't speak today. And it's aimed right at her head. So this is another Johnny Craig cover, I believe, or Jack Davis. Yeah, sorry, Jack Davis. What am I thinking? Jack Davis cover. And just a really great cover. This one of my favorite homages to this is done by The Simpsons. It's in The Simpsons. It's not a comic, but it is in the TV series. They have an homage to this. So I just really, really love this cover. So definitely, I think it is one of those things where it's a good time to buy actually right now. I'm seeing an overall trend in the comic market where things are becoming a little bit more affordable. So in my day job, like this is not my job doing these videos. My day job, I'm a marketing guy. Like I deal with lots and lots of businesses, about over 400 clients. It's like kind of crazy. So often I get a real sense of how they are thinking. And what I see within the market in general, the overall market, is caution. And what happens when companies are cautious, they hold back their money. They don't spend on new things. They kind of just keep things as they are, or even cut back. And what I'm seeing in the overall market with comics is a similar kind of thing. There's a very big fear right now that we're going into a recession. And I saw the same happen at the beginning of COVID. Just before COVID hit, there was a bit of a good time to buy because people were like a little wary. Oh, if I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to be stuck at home. I'm not going to have the cash that I need to buy comics, so I'm going to hold back. And you saw a bit of a dip back then in the prices. And it was a very short-lived dip because then there was stimulus checks and all these things that kind of brought money back into the comic market. And people had more time on their hands. They didn't spend so much. So all of a sudden they were spending more on comics. Well, I see that now is a bit of a different time because the market has opened up again. But at the same time, we have this big fear of a recession. And as a result, I think people are holding back a little bit in terms of how much they're willing to spend on things. So I've seen a bunch of auctions recently, and I was surprised how affordable the books had gone for. Much less than what I would have expected. So I think it's a good time to buy if you have the money. But it is one of those risky times because it is potentially a recession time. So keep that in your mind to set as well. Okay, so that was those questions. The next question is from Collector6, and this was from Instagram. He's a friend of mine on Instagram, and we debate about things all the time. He was the one that was debating with me about Ant-Man's first appearance. Well, one of the things that he was debating with me about was the seduction of the innocent, and was it really the driving force behind the Comic Code Authority? And so he wrote the following: was SOTI actually the driving force? I have not heard the SOTI participated in hearings. Okay, so I actually did some research on this, and I'll show you what the, first of all, I'll explain what the seduction of the innocent is. If you've watched my channel before, you'll probably know, and you'll be like, oh, not again. but for those who don't know what the seduction of the innocent is, it is a book. And it's this book. This is the first print. It was written by Frederick Wortham, and he was basically a psychologist. And he dealt with a lot of juvenile delinquency. And he basically would interview these kids, and he noticed a pattern. And the pattern that he noticed was a lot of these children read comic books. And so he basically said, okay, well, they read comic books. It must be the comic books that is causing the delinquency. So he kind of connected the two. The funny thing is, if you ask any kids back then, they probably all read comic books, and it wasn't that that made them delinquent at all. It's just that, it's not, it's sort of like, you breathe, oh my goodness, that must cause juvenile delinquency. It's like that level. But the problem is, he did connect the two, and he started becoming he was an advocate against comics in terms of the amount of gore and violence and attitudes within the comics towards police. And he basically wrote this book, and it's a very interesting read, actually, where he basically talks about a lot of anecdotal evidence to support his overall thesis that comics led to juvenile delinquency. So that's what this book is. And it tells like a whole bunch of little stories. And at the same time, it doesn't just tell stories about, children going down the wrong road. It also mentions different comics and how they have these negative influences. And inside this book is roughly about 155, I believe, references to comics, various comics, those 155 comics that were mentioned in this, and that he believed were negatively impacting on kids. And you'll notice, like, he would also even have like some of the comics shown. Now, there's actually two. This is a little bit more than people might know about this book. There's actually two versions of this book. This is the second version. I actually wanted to get. I've seen once the opportunity to get the first original version. Now, this version is different than the other version, and the difference is this: that at the back of the first, this is a first print, but the very back of the first few of these books was an appendices, where it basically said, here's all the comics that we're listing and all the publishers, and like it's like notes for what was included inside the book. And they thought, when they were publishing it, mid publishing it, first print, they decided, hey, maybe we should cut that appendix out of the book, and publish it without that, because we're going to get sued by all of those publishers. So they decided to remove that from the book. So a lot of even the first prints will not, a lot of them don't have that extra few pages of notes. So that's the comic, the Seduction of the Innocent. Now, I'm going to give you a timeline, and this timeline is really, really important to understand how that book had a major influence on bringing the Comic Code Authority. So the timeline is this. This book was published on April 19th, 1954. So it had huge, it was huge. It was like major, like it was well, broad. It was a bestseller. It was a big book. It was just everyone was reading it. And the reason everyone was reading it was Wortham was very vocal long before long before printing this book, from late 40s all the way up to 1954. He was very vocal about comics and this influence. Um, and this was kind of his masterpiece, and that he really wanted to put out to the public, and people just gravitated to it. They were like, and they were very influenced by it. Now, one guy that was especially influenced by it was Estelle Kiefer. And Kiefer was interesting because he was involved with a lot of these things related to mobsters, actually, believe it or not. And he basically would, take criminal actions against them, and like make sure that these mobsters were taken out of the picture, basically. Not criminal actions, I mean policing actions. It sounds really bad. But the point is, he saw this as potentially like as the key to why there was this rise in crime. So during the early 50s, there was this weird rise within the US population of juvenile delinquency, and they didn't really know why. And they needed basically a scapegoat. They wanted to find something to blame, and comics seemed like the perfect choice to blame. And Kiefer really liked The Seduction of the Innocent, and it was another guy and him. There's two senators that were basically involved that basically spearheaded the Senate hearings. Now, the Senate hearings happened in the spring of 1954. So we're talking maybe a month later, like May, like May of 54. So, and this was really the book that inspired those Senate hearings. Now, the Senate hearings were where they were going to determine is whether or not the government should step in and regulate the comics. Okay, so they basically, stepped in, and they were going to say, well, should we create guidelines? And there had been talks earlier, before The Seduction of the Innocent, in New York, about doing that specific thing, about creating guidelines where comics would have to follow a certain set of rules in order to get published. That didn't really go as far as the Comic Code Authority did. What ended up happening, though, was during the Senate hearings, one of the key witnesses that they brought to the stand, or brought to speak, was Bill Gaines. And Bill Gaines is the owner of EC Comics, and I spoke about EC earlier and how great they are. Well, a lot of people didn't feel that way about EC Comics because they were very gory covers. They were kind of the really awesome golden age horror that people kind of felt was a little bit too extreme. And I've told this story many times, but I'll tell it one more time. Bill Gaines was actually a little bit pudgy. And this sounds weird, but it's relevant to the story. And his doctor said, "Hey, you gotta kind of watch your weight there. I'm gonna put you on a diet. You're gonna kind of watch your weight for a little bit." And what happened was, he went into these Senate hearings, and he was just waiting around to speak, to put his defense up against, this tyrannical Senate hearing kind of thing. And he was just waiting around, and he hadn't eaten. And he was like, kind of, how you get when you haven't eaten, you get kind of, you're not really yourself. You're not your full, capabilities. You're a bit iffy. And Bill Gaines was a bit iffy. So what happened was, they asked him about a very specific book. This book right here. Crime Suspense Stories number 22. and it's the very famous book because it's the one with the decapitation cover. It's like the head being held up, the axe in the other hand, and it's one of those covers that is considered one of the more gruesome covers in comic books. And they asked him specifically, they had these big, big like blow-ups of the comic covers to show like the audience what these comic covers look like. And they asked him, hey, is this a bit extreme? You know, like, and he's like, oh, no, we didn't push it as far as we could have, because for example, the axe has like a black blood on it, and it could have been red. That would have been more obvious. We could have made it look more like the body at the bottom of the cover. You know, you could see that it was missing a head, or, you know, he basically was talking down how extreme it was. But the media picked it up, and they basically said that, oh, you know, the Bill Gaines sees that this is not nearly extreme enough. You know, you know, it's like, you know, that they kind of, you know, made it a big story that basically he was downplaying the violence that was on his own comics. So Bill Gaines was basically pressured by that point to do something, or they were probably going to bring in very extreme rules against comics. So he sort of took a preemptive step, and he gathered the other publishers to basically create the Comic Code Authority. And actually, it was kind of sad, because what happened was, within that group, you had DC and you had Timely, you had all these kind of big publishers. Strangely, he didn't really put himself forward enough, and he kind of got a little bit taken advantage of, I feel in that group, because what happened was, a lot of the rules that they put into play were specifically targeted against EC. So, for example, you were not allowed to use the word weird. Well, if you look at many of the EC titles, they would have the word weird. Another thing you couldn't say was eerie, or there were certain words you weren't allowed to use, or horror, you know, these kind of things. So all of a sudden, all the titles that had those words were not allowed to be used. Well, that's most of EC, most of the EC line. So all of a sudden, he was basically pushed out of the comic market. So that was kind of the timeline with the Comic Code Authority. It actually came into play in September of 1954, and the first books that were really stamped with that Comic Code Authority were in 1955, March of 1955 to be exact. So that is the timeline. It was a very quick timeline, you know. So we got Seduction of the Innocent in April, then we got Senate hearings the next month, you know, it's like, and then we got the Comic Code Authority a few months later. It was fast, and this book had a huge influence on ending the golden age of comics. So I hope this answers everyone's questions really well, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me babble about all these golden age comics and different things. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and all that wonderful stuff. And ask me your question, and I'll do my best to answer it. Thanks again.